The Montreal Canadiens have a huge decision to make. With the World Championships coming up in May and the Olympic qualifiers being at the end of August, the question is to be begged, will Juraj Slafkovsky be allowed to represent his country, and will the Montreal Canadiens let him go? Kent Hughes actually gave some of his thoughts about this. We have to break it down because it's going crazy on Habs social media today. Plus, a note on Kirby Dach as he speaks out about his recovery from his injury, and also a Michael Pezzetta potential trade to the Vancouver Canucks. All of that on this episode of Habs Digest. Jesse, we're going to dive first into the Michael Pezzetta stuff, and I'm just going to be perfectly frank with you guys. This isn't like a true trade rumor, but this comes from Canucks Army, which is a Canucks blog website, where they kind of went through some players that they thought could provide a physical presence for Vancouver, and they kind of said Michael Pezzetta might be an option. And if we go into it, they say, 39 games, 3 goals, 7 assists. Well, this was a week ago. Pezzetta's had a few more games since then, but they say he does it all as a fourth liner. He says providing energy. He's as good as it gets. He's willing to go through a wall, and they say for these and many other reasons, the Canadiens might just hang on to him, but they've got a lot of youth coming in and will need to clear some space eventually. He might be gettable for something around a fourth-round selection. Now, objectively, talent-wise, maybe a fourth-round selection makes sense, but I have a stat to show you. This is the list of hits per 60 minutes of every player in the NHL who's played at least 10 games. Michael Pezzetta has 31 hits per 60 minutes. He's averaging over a hit every 2 minutes. Second place is Nick Deslauriers, a full 8 hits per 60 below him. Jesse, the difference between Pezzetta and Deslauriers first and second is bigger than the difference between Deslauriers and 25th place. Insane stuff from Pezzetta. He's a unique player, and I just feel like, even though maybe Canucks fans would love him, I just don't see any reason to do this move.
As Habs fans, we love the energy that he plays with. And we know he really affects the momentum of the game with his hits, with his physicality, with his overall level of engagement. It's just absolutely unreal. 6 in the entire NHL if we're looking at just total games played, 177 hits there. But it's a fair question all the same, just because we have so many young guys coming up, right? And most likely a lot of these guys are starting either on the third or fourth line, right? So, I mean, I definitely, I recognize the value. We love Pezzetta, but I think it's a fair conversation to have all the same. I don't know if it's not done before this trade deadline. I wouldn't be super shocked to kind of see a move done kind of before the start of next season, just to kind of open up some places. But I mean, you got to love what Michael Pezzetta just brings night in, night out. He's kind of like the ideal fourth liner in a lot of ways.
Yeah, he's a fourth-line grinder, and I think he's at his best when he's on a line where he can really just forecheck and bug the other team. I mean, we've seen him be on some really good forechecking fourth lines with Jake Evans, with Harvey Pinard, or whether it's Owen, and there's been some great fourth lines last year and even a bit this year. But yeah, I get the point of wanting to move him to create some space. I just feel like Kent Hughes wouldn't just give away Michael Pezzetta for a fourth rounder. I mean, he is... of players in the Habs organization, I believe he's one of the longest tenured, not just with the Canadiens, but with the organization as a whole. So it's like, I don't see it happening, but it's an interesting conversation nonetheless. What do you guys think? Would you give up Pezzetta? I don't think I would, although even if it makes a little bit of sense to do so. But Jesse, we're going to transition into Kirby Dach, a guy who unfortunately we haven't seen play a lot of games recently, but he spoke yesterday about his injury, him and Coach Marty, and Marty said some of the stuff you kind of expect. He's happy that Kirby Dach's making progression, this. But Kirby had some interesting stuff to say, Jesse. They asked him, is your goal to play by the end of the season? He said, yeah, well, just take it day by day. He didn't say no. They kind of asked him a few other questions, like, for example, like, what do you think about Coach Marty, who's been super supportive? He said Marty has been so supportive, and the fact that they can have a two-way conversation, Kirby still giving valuable input, Marty giving it back. There's a lot of great stuff from what Kirby said here, and it makes me really happy to hear that he also said his physical development seems to have not been hindered at all after his surgery.
It's just absolutely amazing to see this from Kirby Dach. Like, even though he can't be on the ice, he's doing everything right now within his power to improve himself as a hockey player. Being involved in pre-scouting meetings, game prep, post-game, he's encouraged to share his thoughts on the team. He's watching this game, from 200 feet up, really getting that better view of really what's going on. And already a smart player, comes across when he's talking to the media. Now I feel like he's really going to put this into practice. Just all of this kind of coaching that he's been getting, just watching the game from another perspective. And it's just really amazing to see again, speaking of the culture that we have, this type of player that cares more about the team, more about, us getting wins and the contracts and everything else like that. I just think it's really so amazing, right? That we're just getting this culture right now, because he didn't need to be hanging around the team. It just says so much. And the fact that we got so many young guys on the team right now that we know of that care about winning so much. We know Slaf, Cole, Nick, they all want to win, right? They're all passionate about that. So for me, that's really what's so amazing to see from Kirby is just he's really going above and beyond more than what's needed. It's also really nice and says a lot about the organization that they would really include him into so much of what's going on behind the scenes with the Habs right now.
Yeah, I think the lack of ego on this team, like you said, is such a big thing. And Kirby really just seems he's sad that he's not playing, but the fact he's still involved is really amazing, like you said. I'm just super excited, right? And he was also asked about Slaf, like, you know, what do you see in Slaf? He said, well, I actually saw a lot of myself in Slaf, which makes sense, right? Some guys coming out like highly touted, maybe didn't have the best first little while. Now, of course, Slaf got injured in his first year. Dach struggled a lot with injuries, still is struggling a bit with injuries, but he did say that he thinks himself and Slaf complement each other on the ice very well, and I'd agree with that, Jesse. I think there's just an awesome chemistry building between a lot of these guys, and you can see how badly Kirby wants to get back on the ice. He said, like, you know, when he was able to put his skates on the ice, it was such a mental relief for him just to see that progress, hoping he comes back sooner than later. And even if it's not this season, you know there'll be a big ovation come September or October. But we got to talk a bit about Slaf himself, Jesse, and this is some interesting stuff here. There's a lot of stuff going on social media today, on Reddit, on Twitter, on even Facebook, talking about Slafkovsky. Now, the big thing with him, as you can see, Habs on Reddit was posting on Twitter, and I just kind of took screenshots from here, but they said, well, the Habs allow Slafkovsky to play for Team Slovakia at the final Olympic qualifiers at the end of August, and Kazakhstan's in the same group, right? But Kent Hughes also spoke in an interview for a Slovakian website, and they kind of talked about this. He said, to be honest, we haven't talked about it yet. We will have to discuss the pros and cons. We are still in the middle of the season, and for now, we will focus on it. When the time comes, we'll sit down and discuss what's best for Slaf. Now, I will leave that Slovakian article down below. You can translate it, have a read through yourself. Jesse, what are your thoughts on this? The World Cup, or the World Championships, coming up in May, I believe starting May 10th. The Olympic qualifiers starting August 29th. You got to think Slaf wants to be, especially for the Olympics, now the NHL players will be allowed back. What are your thoughts? Do you think the Habs will let him play in both?
I don't believe in both. I believe that Slaf will definitely be a part of the Olympics. Not so sure about the World Championship. I believe with Kent Hughes, it really comes down to NHL level competition all the way through or bust. But Kent really knows he's kind of playing a coy here. But let's face it, he knows how much Slaf loves Slovakia. Mm-hmm. He knows how much Slovakia loves Slaf. This is a super patriotic type of guy. Whenever he sees somebody in the crowd kind of rocking a Slovakian flag, he's going to bring them a stick, a puck. This guy loves his country through and throughout. And even I would say a greater point than that, which Kent Hughes also realizes, that this is part of Slaf's destiny, dare I say, to play for Slovakia and really kind of fulfill his potential of becoming one of the best, if not the best player to ever come from Slovakia, which is still a big saying. If we're looking at some of the players who come from Slovakia, we're talking about Marian Hossa, we're talking about the likes of Peter Bondra, NHL legends, right? Mm-hmm. But Slaf has this potential, but there's no way he's going to get up into those ranks unless he's really playing for his country. Now, this is a guy who he really feeds off of energy, off of really representing, you know, his country, his team, everything else. So I feel like him representing Slovakia at the Olympics could really help his development, because I feel it would really bring out the best in his game.
Yeah, I agree. And of course, he was at the Olympics before, but NHL players weren't there. And to be able to go back there, and I mean, they won a medal, right? Like he did such great things, but to be able to go back with the best competition in the world, with some of his friends and Nemitz and Mesar, with, you know, the new boom of Slovakian hockey, right? And like you said, to get him up there with the names of not only, you know, Bondra, Hossa, Gaborik, Stastny, there's a lot of guys who are on these lists. Now, I'm not sure yet, but like, I'm sure who else. There's a lot of other people who were born in Slovakia, but it's crazy, right? And I know there's a lot of Slovakian fans watching this. What do you guys think? Do you guys want to see Slaf for both? I'm sure you do. But here's the thing, Jesse. Do you think that if Slaf makes his case to Kent Hughes, they would allow him? Because I truly believe that Slaf is going to make his case to say, let me play in the World Championships. I know you do see NHL talent in the World Championships, so some guys will still go if they're not in the playoffs. I think that Slaf is in kind of the perfect position to play that kind of hockey in that postseason time frame, right? Because Montreal's not competing for the playoffs, that's kind of my mindset at the moment. Like, get him some meaningful tournament hockey after the regular season is over. I get focusing on rest and development, but do you maybe see a world where the Habs kind of buy into that philosophy?
I mean, you know, Slaf is going to be advocating for sure. He loves hockey. He loves his country. All the same, I think it's sometimes in the best interest, though, of management to, even though the player might want something, to maybe know what's part of his development, just kind of long term. You're at the end of a long season for sure. Every NHL player is nursing injuries, even if they're a little bit smaller. So anything you can do to kind of protect, your first, kind of cradle that first overall pick, and just making sure he's okay. If it wasn't such a highly touted, meaning so much first line type of player, we might be a little bit more open to having that happen. But as we know, freak accidents can happen all the time. But I mean, Slav is definitely going to want to play there. But I just feel like maybe just with it falling at the end of the season, maybe just to rest them up, they're going to say, okay, no to the World Championships, but yes to the Olympics. Still kind of find that happy medium and give them that time to prep and be ready. I think might be the sweet spot for both him and the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, well, regardless of what happens, that we'll be cheering him on for Team Slovakia. I mean, I feel like, we're cheering more for Slovakian hockey than I ever have before. I'm so proud to be a fan of Juraj Slafkovsky, Team Slovakia. Really excited to see him represent his country at the international level. But yeah, let us know what you guys think. Should he play in both? Should he play in one? Should he play in neither? We'd love to hear from you down below. But that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We're like 200 subs away from 11,000. So if you could hit that button now, we'd really appreciate it. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.